I'm Darren Pritchett with Mike Singer, the Notre Dame football recruiting insider, Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. How about an update on Khalil Barnes?
Yeah, so this is a young man who Notre Dame just offered less than 2 weeks ago, and he's told Blue and Gold that he's going to be officially visiting Notre Dame for the Clemson game. Interestingly enough, for folks watching on YouTube, you see the on-3 prediction machine gives Clemson an 89.7 chance percent to land him per that algorithm. That's a little inflated in my opinion. I'd probably put it somewhere like 60-40 Clemson to Notre Dame, in my opinion. Oklahoma offered recently, and I'm told that he's going to visit there as well in November. So he's listed as a cornerback, 6'1", 185. Notre Dame's recruiting him as a receiver. Chancey Stuckey and Barnes have built a good connection. I already posted this article Tuesday morning, so folks can check out what Barnes told me about his interest in Notre Dame and kind of what's next for him and the Irish. But positive development. Clemson weekend will be huge for Notre Dame, and specifically with this recruitment because he's considering both schools so highly. 3-star recruit, former Wake Forest commit, but really blowing up on the scene here lately with offers from Notre Dame, Clemson that offered earlier in the fall, and then Oklahoma recently. And I believe it was Miami offered him. I know maybe that was a different player I'm thinking of, but he just keeps picking up more offers. Notre Dame is just not waiting around for one of their top guys they've been on it for a while to commit to a different school. Then Notre Dame has to scramble. They're kind of being proactive in those plan B options, so to speak.
How about a question that's been popping into my head? Normally, I try to ask questions in regard to what Irish fans are wanting to hear. So I'm going to be selfish here and ask this question. Since we're coming down last couple of months before National Signing Day, I'm wondering, as you look at the closing weeks of this cycle, is there an assistant or two for Notre Dame that has the most important or challenging, however you want to look at it, the most important role the rest of the way before National Signing Day?
Yeah, well, one, it has to be Tommy Rees. I mean, that's the obvious one because I think it's just less than 60 days until National Signing Day, and not only does Notre Dame not have a quarterback committed, we don't even have a great lead on who they're going to go after. So you would hope that Notre Dame's able to bring in someone for the Clemson game, but Darren, we will just see. I think that one's is obvious, and then another one would probably be Chancey Stuckey, because when he came in, it was depleted receiver room. And it probably will be after this season too. You never know what transfers could potentially happen. Some guys unhappy about playing time, whatever it may be. So you really needed to bolster your receiver core in this recruiting class. You have 3 committed with Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, and Rico Flores, 2 of those young men from Texas and 1 from Northern California. You have big time programs in those states, so you need to keep those young men locked in. As well as land Tayshawn Lyons, a 4-star pass catcher who he picked up a Texas A&M offer on Monday. You need to keep him, thinking at Notre Dame at the top of his mind. And if you don't land someone like Lyons, you have to get Khalil Barnes, or do you offer someone else at that point? So I would say Stuckey and Rees. And when you talk Notre Dame recruiting over these past few years, you look at the positions Notre Dame needs to do a better job at: quarterback and receiver. You could also throw a corner in there. Notre Dame's really good cornerback class and defensive back class overall. But yeah, for this discussion, I would say Rees and Stuckey.
Since so many people write to me, there's a friend of mine that's a national broadcaster that's a big Notre Dame fan. He direct messaged me today and said, you know what? All I'm worried about right now for the rest of the season is keeping this outstanding Notre Dame football recruiting class together. He's worried that Bowen is going to jump ship at some point. I remember earlier this year, a couple of weeks or so, maybe even further back, you had the sense that Keon Keeley was looking elsewhere and may decommit, and that ended up happening. So based on the DMs I'm getting and based on the conversation we had earlier this year, let me ask you this. Is there a player in this class you feel like they have to babysit more than anybody else? I'm sure there's nobody close to what you were feeling with Keeley at that time, but is there anyone you're feeling like they maybe have to babysit a little more than everybody else?
First of all, Darren, I always get nervous when you bring something up I've previously said, because yeah, this is me we're talking about. But you already said his name. I mean, it's Peyton Bowen. It's not even a question. I mean, Darren, you've had some good questions, but this one was terrible. That's a
Okay.
very obvious one, Mister.
Terrible.
Come on, Mister Pritchett. Hey, you get a couple passes a year, but yeah, it's obvious. I mean, it's not even babysitting as much at this point as it's just flat out a recruiting battle. Like I don't even know how, like if someone could, yeah, I couldn't call it babysitting because he just visited Oregon this past weekend, and for the first time in months, we've heard him mention Michigan in an interview with On3 Sam Spiegelman. And you already know OU and A&M so have been involved, and he wants to visit both of those schools again, as well as Notre Dame. We're expecting him to visit for the Clemson game. So that recruitment is you call him a committed prospect, but it's a total battle up until National Signing Day. And I did post an article on Monday called The Gold Standard. I went through all the latest with Notre Dame's 2023 targets and then listed a handful of 23 Irish commits who are still being pursued by other schools, some to the degree of Peyton Bowen or someone like Dylan Edwards, who I just kind of mentioned in there because I know there was a rumor he might visit Kansas, and then that didn't happen. But yeah, I covered all those guys.
All right. Don't ask knucklehead questions next week. I'll save that. It's on a post-it note right by the screen here, and you'll get all A+ questions next week.
All
I
right.
promise. Okay.
Sounds good, Darren.